Kite. I'm here with Pat Goodman, the designer for North Kites, and we're at the importer demo in Dakhla, and it's blowing 30 knots, and we are on the beach doing this interview. So if you hear the wind, it's because it is windy and everyone's riding some pretty awesome kites.
It is
right now.
windy.
So Pat, I have so many questions for you. I'm going to jump to the other side of the camera and ask some questions about the gear.
Okay.
So yeah, let's maybe start with the model line. I think the first thing almost every consumer assumed was that the big jumping kite in the lineup would be a copy of the Switchblade or an evolution of the Switchblade. And having ridden it over the last week, I've definitely discovered that it is a fresh start. Why don't you tell me about the starting point for the new Orbit kite and the process of designing it?
Okay, well, we definitely wanted to have a kite in the same genre as the Switchblade, but I really wanted to start from scratch and really set myself apart from what we were doing in the past. And I kind of really went in depth and redid all of the entire outline and plan form. A lot of refinement went into the profiles. It's a much leaner entry than the profiles I have used in the past. A lot more curve carried through the entire profile, so it's turned out to be nice and slippery through the sky, extremely lifty, combined with this flattened arc shape with the two-stage arc design, where we have the central region it's an open arc shape, but it's a wide shape, but it's not an unnatural shape for the kite to take, right? And then the tips are pulled in a little bit, so that helps with the steering and the stability. But combined with the new profiles and new outline, then the flattened arc shape, this thing is a boosting machine, you know.
So the boosting's definitely enhanced by the flatness of the arc and generating more power. Are there any drawbacks to having a flatter arc and not as round a shape?
Of course, if you go too flat, you have stability issues. I think that we're as far as we can go comfortably so that things stay under control. This was an amazing test to see everybody out there in 30, 35, even sometimes 40 knots. And I think we nailed it. We're right on the edge of how far we can go and still have it all stay together in this kind of strong wind. Yeah. So it's not necessarily only the boosting, but it's the hang time that you really benefit from this big footprint in the sky, because this flattened arc shape gives you the biggest relationship between the actual kite area and the usable kite area. Yeah. So it's very efficient for a side. It will be the most efficient kite in the range that we have.
For riders with shorter arms, I definitely noticed there's a shorter bar throw to achieve the maximum V power on the kite. Does that help with the flatness of the kite, or is that a completely different design element?
No, that's a different design element. That's mostly done in the bridling, actually. We put a lot of focus to try this year on all the kites to try to keep the sheeting range throughout the bar roughly the same. You know, because it's you're dealing. There's a big dynamic difference between a larger kite and a small kite, but having them have the same kind of feel in the bar from fully sheeted in to fully sheeted out in the same kind of travel distances, it takes a lot of work in the bridling, mostly in the bridling.
So what do you do bridling wise to actually achieve that?
I can't tell you. No. It's just about the dynamics of the bridle and the balancing. You know, basically the smaller kites, the bridles are more powered up, let's say, and then the larger kites, the bridle is more powered down. So the main thing is that each kite is individually tested, and each kite is different. There's no two sizes or a scale of each other. There's some change throughout the entire range. So you just we test every single one of them, and then. And it's not a formula, but I definitely have enough experience that I know where to go when I go drop down in size or drop up. I know what direction to head in the bridle so that I can maintain roughly the same feel.
How much of it is sort of mathematical equations that you're working at on the computer, and how much of it is an art form that you've come to develop? Like when you're on the beach and you just...
Bridling is a very hands-on thing, really. It's experience, and it's just a lot of testing and hard work. I would like to say that it can be figured out in the computer, but it's not really. It doesn't really work that way. Although, the software is parametric. Once I have a logic, I can apply it to the next size kite and have a starting point that's really close. It's usually a lot of fine tuning. So.
On the bridle front, you guys made a very conscious decision not to have any pulleys on the kite this year. What brought that around?
Having no pulleys has always been my dream. Started doing it over the years, slowly migrating away from them. But you have a reliability factor, you've got drag. It enables you to, having no pulleys enables you to use a thinner bridle line because it doesn't have any moving parts or any wear factor going on. So that was one of the things we brought up in the presentation, is that we're using a small diameter, it's actually a control line. It's got spliced in connections. We measure and produce them under load so that they're very accurate. And the conventional bridle line is usually a Dyneema, or in some cases aramid core with a polyester cover, and the polyester cover wreaks havoc with shrinkage. It's there for durability only, which if you have pulleys you have to have this, but it really shrinks a lot, and it's amazing how much a bridle can change, and it changes in relation to the length of the line. So if you got a couple percent of shrinkage, let's say, over time, then the large sections of your bridles are shrinking more than the smaller sections, and so it changes the dynamic and the bias of each cascade completely. So having a stable bridle line was a very big one of the reasons that we wanted to move away from having pulleys.
Okay, you can have any pulleys on any of the kites in the lineup, or is it going to be completely pulley free?
No pulleys at all. Okay. Yeah. It's a lot more work from a design point of view, because every time you change one of the bias of the cascade, it affects the other cascade. Nothing is self-leveling like you have with pulleys. Yeah. So I would say that it's a lot more work, but the end result is lower drag, more dynamic, less reely feel in the kite. It's very direct and sporty feeling. I like it a lot. So.
Yeah, like back in the day of I guess it was the globe kite with the little O-ring and the best Waru, and then the crossbow, all came out around the same time with pulleys, and it changed the way kites.
We had 6 pulleys in some of the older kites for years, and then it went down to 4. We made the primary cascade a fixed point, and then it ended up just 2, and then we actually started the development with pulleys earlier this year. All the King of the Air kites you saw Nick and Jesse on, they had pulleys in the bridle, just 2, one on each side, and we were able to work it out. We actually liked the end result better without the pulley.
How much of the design time on, so when you start your, I'm assuming when you start your R&D process, you probably start with one size first?
I start with the few central sizes usually, and then because it usually, you can't always rely on the wind being perfect 9-meter weather all the time. But I usually start in the middle. I usually start with 7, 9s, and 12s on everything to make sure I've got a little bit of everything, and that I can get the development time depending on the weather.
So how much of the actual, when you're working in that R&D process, how much of the time is spent on the shape of the kite, and how much of the time is the fine-tuning of the bridles once you've got the shape finalized?
In the beginning, there's a lot of both, As the development gets further along, we've got where we want to be with the outline and the arc shape and the profiles, and so we're getting the behavior that we're after as far as performance. Then the final handling is really a lot going on in the bridles. But you can change the kite 1,000 ways with the bridles. It's amazing.
So in the kite lineup, you've got 3 kites that you were trying this week. There's the Orbit. The Carve, which is the surf kite, which sits deeper in the window than the Orbit.
Yes.
How, in the design process, do you make a kite sit deeper in the window? Is that the kite profile shape, or is that bridle?
It's a combination of the profile, the LE diameter, and also the attack angle. The 4 profiles are sitting in the wing itself. So the whole kite is sheeted in a little bit more, so that it tends to sit a little further back in the window.
Is it more challenging to design a kite and sit back in the window and still have the power?
It is challenging because they don't want to fly forward quite as nicely as they would. So we've kind of took a middle ground on that. We didn't want to make it too hardcore down the line because that's a very limited dream for most of us to have perfect down the line wave riding conditions. But since it is a little bit worried we're going to get hit with something here.
Let's step back out of the window.
Okay.
Get the kites in the background. Sandblasted like we are.
That's okay.
Yeah, maybe stand right there, and then I've still got the water.
Okay, no problem. Okay. They're talking about the
So the bridling and the depower of like a kite that sits deeper in the window.
Yeah, so you know, I started to say we chose some middle ground on this. We didn't want it to be too over the board surf down the line oriented, because it is for strapless freestyle as well, and also, you know, everybody's going to use it for free ride as well. So and there are some complaints if you get a too hardcore down the line surf kite that they don't go upwind very well. But the other thing too is that if they do sit back in the window, you know, a reasonable amount, then they do foil really well, and so there's a lot of people use these wave kites for foilboarding as well.
Yeah, definitely. Our test team, I'd say the majority of them, 7s and 9s, were riding surf kites for our foils, and then
I think that would be the choice, because you don't want your kite to fly too far forward when you're riding a foil, because going upwind is not a problem, you know. But these kites do drift. They turn, have a nice and pivoty turn, but they don't struggle to go upwind. But like you said, if we have it sitting too far back in the window, it does affect the depower, because it's. But one of the things I've done to overcome this problem is with the larger LE diameters, I'm able to use less curve in the canopy. Okay, so what happens is we still get a profile roughly the same thickness. It's producing the same kind of power that we need, but there's less canopy deformation and blowdown at lower attack angles. So as you sheet out, the canopy doesn't just deform so bad that it creates a lot of drag. In that scenario, the kite will drift back even further. So you're trying to depower, and that thing's there's so much drag, it's trying to drift back in the window. By having less curve through the canopy, a little bit more LE diameter, it helps the kite fly forward when you sheet out, you know. So you sheet in, and it can sit back where it belongs, and if you need it to fly forward, you can get it to fly forward.
You mentioned the diameter of the leading edge a little bit. That kind of brings us to the next topic of inflation pressure of the diameters. You were talking a little bit about that earlier in the meeting of being an ideal, different ideal for each kite.
It's directly related to LE diameter. It's not necessarily the kite style, but it's related to LE diameter. So since the Carve has a larger LE diameter for its size, its given size, for instance, there might be the case where a 7 Carve has the same inflation pressure as a 9 Orbit, let's say, because they're roughly the same size LE diameters. But we do supply a recommended inflation pressure printed on every kite, and it's different for every kite, size and model. And it's just a starting point. You should still do what we call the bend test. You should inflate it, bend it over on its leading edge over, and make sure it springs back and that it's got a nice recovery there. What we're finding here in this super strong winds, I believe if you're on the top end of the wind range scale, you should always bump up, you know, at least 1 psi over
stiffer.
What we said.
So in lighter winds, we want to get more twist to help the kite fly in lighter winds
and steering. It can impact the steering, but it can also impact the stability. So I would say when the wind's a little lighter, that the inflation pressures we recommend are the right amount. But when the wind is stronger, I would suggest going a little bit more.
Okay. Cool. On the Freestyle Kite, the Pulse, what are the challenges of designing a kite that has really good slack and pop? Like, how do you do that compared to the other kites?
A lot of it's a combination of things. It's in the design itself. It's got a more upright design. It's got a higher aspect ratio, which helps it fly forward. The choice of profiles, and the bridling. We try to get it to fly off the wingtips as much as possible, so that it has a more familiar feel to a sea kite. But it's not, you know, it does have to depower still, so it's never going to have the slack of a sea kite. But we have a very happy middle ground that does provide you plenty of slack. It's a little more committed than a sea kite for sure, and this will always be the case because they have more depower. But it's a combination of the choice of profiles and the aspect ratio and the outline.
Let's talk a little bit.
And the arc shape, actually. Sorry. It's definitely more it's more C-shaped in the arc shape, which gives it produces less power overall because it's got a smaller footprint in the sky, and which also helps you from not getting too yanked when you unhook, you know. I
haven't had a chance to ride the Pulse yet. Does it have a similar depower range? Other kites?
Yeah, it does. But you know, you can tighten it up a little bit by moving the wingtip setting further forward and get more firm feeling and more steering impulse, so that the kite doesn't wander so much. But in the setting that we ship it on, it's actually quite light and lively, which the light bar pressure is actually nice for unhooking because it doesn't change so much when you unhook, as far as the amount of sheeting that changes when you unhook. But we're finding that it's a pretty fast kite, you know, just by the nature of the design, and so some of the riders, like Bruna, she prefers to slow it down a little bit, and by moving the wingtip setting forward, it doesn't really slow it down, it just stiffens it up so that everything's just dampened a little bit, so it doesn't wander around so much, you know. But
you've been foiling quite a bit lately. What kites are you using for your foil boarding right now? Are you using the Carve for the stronger one foiling?
Primarily I use Carves for foiling. They want to go in here.
How about on lighter wind days? Is there a kite in the lineup that you're using right now? Oh, what's behind you?
You're still going?
Yeah.
Yeah. For foiling in the lighter wind. To be honest with you, with the foils that I use the larger foils.
Yeah.
So a light wind day, to me, I still wouldn't use anything bigger than a 9 or a 10. Because I don't jump personally. I'm not a boosting foiling guy. I'm just cruising around. Yeah. So for recreational foiling, I actually find that the 9 and the 10 Carve work fine. But I definitely, I know that Hugh and some of the other guys that actually do like to boost and stuff, they're using the Orbit in the larger sizes in particular. When it gets to the smaller sizes, they prefer the Carve.
When you say larger, do you mean like a 12?
Yeah, 12. Yeah. No, I don't think anybody in my camp uses much bigger than a 12. Jesse was recently testing with me. We were riding, what was he? He was riding a Carve 10 in about 8 knots, you know, and then flying all over the place.
Yeah. So. I'm going to assume that you're probably working on a single strut kite for release early next year. Would that be a fair assumption?
I can't really say. We definitely got a couple other projects in the works right now. Yeah. The main thing right now is to get the foundation laid, have a solid line of kites and boards, twin tips, surfboards, control system, foils. I mean, there's a lot. We did a lot in this last year.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see the amount of work that you guys did in a really short length of time. It shows how experienced.
Yeah, we got a good team. We've got good connections. We all have experience at this, and so we did pull it off. But there are some other projects in the works, but it's a ways off. It's best not to get anybody too amped up about it, you know. Yeah.
Getting back to the R&D process a little bit. You're based in Taiwan.
Yeah.
When you design a kite, did you send the files off to the loft? They make the kite and then ship it to you by like FedEx, so you get it the next day?
It's a combination. Usually I send the design files through, and when they're finished, they're either sending them in groups to me in Taiwan, or I do frequent factory visits because I'm still, at the time earlier on, I was doing a lot of work on the finishing details and stuff, so I would actually just go pick stuff up. Often some stuff goes directly to New Zealand. It depends if I've got riders there waiting on stuff to work with me. But usually what happens is it comes to me first, and I do preliminary bridle work with my local team of riders in Taiwan. And then Hugh and Uli both travel through Taiwan on their way to China all the time from New Zealand, so I have them frequently coming through and testing stuff with me. And then I've been getting the team riders over there, and then I also go to New Zealand, and I'll be going to Hawaii, and you know, there's no shortage of helpers. It's just it's a little bit. We're not all in the same place, so it requires a little bit more logistics. But I'm in Taiwan because it's windy and it's private. We got big beaches. I get everything from 4-meter weather to 14-meter weather, so it covers bases really nicely. So.
Over the years, how many kites do you think you've flown?
Wow, you know, this is a good question, because I do make it a personal goal of mine to ride everything that I've ever designed. And I think only in the cases...
Every single prototype.
Every single prototype. I think there might be only in cases where I've made duplicates and I've sent one off to maybe to Hawaii or to New Zealand to have duplicate R&D going on. Would be kites that I haven't ridden.
Yeah.
I'll never let anything go that hasn't passed my personal QC first, as far as in feeling. Because my skill level as a kiter, I'm older now. I don't do a lot of whole huge crazy stuff, but I have a very good feel for kites behavior and the kite trim and its aerodynamic performance, and so I can feel stuff the second I leave the beach. If it's oversheeted, I don't even bother going out 20 meters. I turn around and come back and trim it, and but yeah, nothing gets. It's got to get past me first. And I'm the bridle guru in the group. It's really kind of hard to do bridle work abroad, so I always make sure that anything that's going out of here is passes my inspection first.
Yeah. When you're working with the pro team riders, how many team riders would you work with, say, when you were working on the Orbit? Which pro riders had input, and how much of the design process?
Yeah, each and every kite had the team guys involved. The Orbit was the first kite that we put a lot of time into, because we knew that we were going to get Nick Jacobson on board, and we were considering a slightly different direction for that kite, but since the first event he was going to go to was the King of the Air, we decided to make it a 5-strut kite just for stability, and because there's a lot of popular 3-strut freeride kites, and a lot of people ask us why we didn't do a 3-strut freeride kite, but actually no one has asked me that question at this meeting, because everyone has come off the water and said, oh my God, yeah, the Orbit is so much fun, and it really is like the dark horse that they weren't expecting it to be so much fun, but it really helps, especially here. We've got these extreme conditions, and having 5 struts is really in your favor. Struts are your friend when it comes to being overpowered. There's no question. So, but and then So anyway, back to your original question. So we had Nick and also our entire internal crew working on the Orbit development. And also then Jesse came on, which was this was the most amazing thing for me, for him to come off of sea kites and go on to the Orbit, and he had a week to get used to it before the King of the Air, and he got on the podium. I mean, this is pretty amazing. So it just goes to show you how natural and easy it is to get used to that kite. I think everyone has told me that they feel right at home once they hop on it. So, but Jesse's been a big help with the Pulse. He's probably been the biggest. Him and Bruno both been the real big input for me on the Pulse. And
what kind of feedback do the pro riders give you?
Well, when I'm there working together with them, it's amazing, because they're just after something so different in the kite than what I can get out of it, because they push it to such a different level, So like I said, I'll get it feeling what I feel should be as close to what I envision, and then these guys get on it and they help me massage it into the real product. So Jesse and Bruno for sure with the Pulse they wanted to make sure that the kite had slack, it had catch you good in kite loops, still had reasonable hang time, which we struggled with that a little bit in some earlier versions of it, and so I made some changes in that kite several times as time went on this last season, and I think now we're in a really comfortable place with it. So.
Kites now do a much better job of catching riders when they're doing a kite loop. What was kind of the change over the years that's made that happen?
It's just a refinement in the overall design and the bridling, and what I noticed, the King of the Air was interesting to watch, because normally it's a little unusual to me to see these guys doing such huge kite loop, mega loops and stuff on basically the free ride kite, which was pretty amazing. But I noticed that the freeride kite has a slightly different style of loop. You know, it actually it turns real fast, and there's a little bit of a hesitation on the upstroke. You know, once you leave the water, you have no resistance against the kite anymore. But since it's got a bigger a footprint in the sky because it's got a flattened arc shape and stuff, when they start the loop, it goes real fast, and it does hesitate a little bit, but you have so much hang time that it always catches them in time
to come.
Right.
Yeah.
But on the Pulse, it's actually, you know, so when they lay into it, it actually, there's just a touch of a delay at the top, and then it goes whoo. It comes around, and it's always there for them, you know. And oftentimes, if they're not careful, it'll get behind them, you know. And it gives them enough time. They'll actually have to send it forward again for you know, a time or two for the landing. So yeah, it's cool. It's super cool to work with these pros. I mean, they really push your skill level to the limit, you know, and your experience.
It must be pretty gratifying to see some of the stuff that they're pulling off.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, and also to see this was just, it's incredible. You know, how many kites were on the water the other day? 50 kites on the water at one time, and the only other kites that were on the water were also my designs. So it was very gratifying. Yeah, I have to say, it was pretty nice. It was definitely a pinnacle in my career, you know. So yeah, I think we got a really solid foundation, and everyone is real happy. I got a great team surrounding me as well, not only pro riders, but we have you know, Hugh Penfold's our engineer, he's amazing, and Uli Summerlot is our product manager, and also doing all the foil and assisting with the production on the surfboards and stuff, and twin tips, and of course we got Mike Raper and on the marketing side, and it's just you know, it was like a dream come true, really. You know, when this all kind of materialized in the beginning, they said, you know, would you be interested in doing a project with us? And I said, well, who is us? You know, and in the beginning, well, actually, they didn't approach me. The North Technology Group guys approached me and said, we're thinking of doing this project, and we were wondering if you were interested. Yeah, and so of course I was very interested, and as time went on, then the other guys got out of their contractual agreements, and I realized who was on board with this, then I was like, oh yeah, man, I want to do this. Especially they're like, what if you could just do anything you want? Like, everything is a clean slate. You can use what materials you want. You can be involved in the decisions of making process about what kites we offer, what they're going to look like. Even in the graphic side, you can have total involvement as a partner, basically. And I said, count me in.
How has the fresh start influenced sort of the design, or not the design chain, but the supply chain of the materials you're using and the factories you're using, and sort of all the things that you're sourcing?
It's influenced everything. We've taken our production to Sri Lanka instead of in the past have done it all in China. Not to say that the China factories weren't fantastic. The one thing that's a little hard to get used to is that with my previous setup, the parent company actually owned the factory, so you have a little bit more freedom in there. But the factory that we joined forces with in Sri Lanka has an amazing team, and they have. What I like about it, it's not new, but they keep all of their equipment really in top-notch shape and in new. So they have a lot of really new. They keep their cutting machines. They rejuvenate them and often replace them regularly. And there's nothing old and outdated in that factory. Everything is. You could eat off the floor in this place. It's amazing, and the team of people that work there have the same passion for excellence that I do, and I really get along great with the production manager. There's a big Sri Lankan woman, and she loves that I'm so anal retentive. You know, she's just like, oh yes, that's great. She's like, I had that same idea, or I was thinking of doing it this way. You know, and she bounces stuff by me all the time, and nothing gets past her, but she really offers a lot of interesting support and suggestions. So,
how much the whole design process is geared towards the way that kites are manufactured at the factory level. Does that influence the way you're designing a kite, like the way it's put together at the factory, or do you deal with the way it's designed after the fact at the factory?
You know, any smart design team will understand the limitations in production and produce products that are.
All right, we're rolling after the sudden stop.
Yeah, you touched base just gently on the materials. I think one of the nicest things that I came on board was to have a clean slate with the materials that I chose to use. And you know, I've worked with Tajin in the past and really enjoy their products and their consistency. Even the factory pointed out to us over and over again that out of all the materials that they've worked with, that the products from Tajin are the most consistent and reliable to work with. You know, so they lay flat on the table. They don't have irregularity issues and stuff. But we put a lot of testing into the options we had for canopy this year, and we tested all. People do ask, you know, why you don't have a triple ripstop or a quadruple 100 ripstop, whatever. And you know, we actually had access to everything, and we went through the whole motions. We tested everything both in the lab and on the field, and we found that the D2, the Tajin Technoforce D2 that we're using, had the best strength to weight ratio, and also the best behavior in the kite, because it didn't have. It has good elongation control over the warp and weft directions, but on the bias it's nice and soft, but with really good recovery. So it gives the kite a real dynamic feeling in the steering. We found that some of these other ones that had a different construction that actually kind of locked up the kites, and they were a little bit stiff feeling in addition to being heavier, and the tear strength in the end wasn't really any stronger. So this was the choice, the reason behind the choice. Yeah, and I also prefer the Tajin Technoforce Dakhla that we use in all the inflated parts too, because the similar reason. I like some softness on the bias because these kites twist a lot and able to for steering, and it can't be too locked up. You want to control your elongation, warp and weft, but it's really nice to have some movement on the bias as long as you have recovery. And this Tajin has the magic formula for the recovery. You know, it really does spring back, and this is the main advantage of using their products. So,
this is almost completely unrelated to the kite, but it's a big part of kite design, I think, to a certain extent. Having where the V is in the front flying lines, like a high V or a low V. Like we've found in our gear testing with the magazine that sometimes we'll put a different bar on a kite, and the kite will suddenly fly completely differently as soon as we put a high V or a low V on a different model. What are your thoughts on V height, and why did you guys choose to use a low V on your kites?
It's interesting because we used to work with a higher V in the past with my previous experience, but it was primarily there for the safety system at the time. It wasn't there by choice. And we got a lot of resistance from importers that they wanted the V low for some. They felt the kites felt more direct and actually faster in the steering, and they also liked for teaching that they could pass the bar through the lines to if the kite does a somersault. But we did a lot of testing on this, and it's interesting. It definitely makes the low V makes the kite more direct. Feeling, and so you could possibly translate that into faster, but I don't know if it's fair to say that it's faster. Well, we've recently done some testing and found that the high V actually, if the bridle's been designed for the high V, you have to keep this in mind. You can't really just swap it from kite to kite.
Well, we've discovered that,
okay. But if you design the kite with a high V, you can actually get a more pivoty turn. So there is something to it. But with the low V, you get a more direct turn, and you get less lag in the steering as well. So, I mean, there's pros and cons of both systems. But you really need to design the bridle because to match the low V or the high V, because you have to match the angle of the bridle meeting the control line meeting the bridle to get the same dynamics out of the kite. Basically, if you put a high V kite on a high V bar on a kite designed for low V, it'll pull the tips in, and it makes it faster, but it makes it misbehave as well. It loses a lot of power, and it has if the tips are too pulled in, it gives it a little bit of a strange behavior. But we did find if you design the bridle around it, it's actually quite nice. But at this point, we still feel there's more pros with having the V low. Yeah,
I think the low V definitely helps with light wind relaunch when you're stuck in 4 knots and you need to get that extra little bit.
Yeah, and the safety system's much cleaner with the low V. With the high V, you either have to have some sort of bungee management system that's flying airborne, unless you don't mind having the landing line big swinging in the wind, which we really hate this. This was one thing that we didn't want our control systems to have. We wanted this internal landing line with the bungee system inside the depower main line, and I know you know what I'm talking about, right? There are brands out there, I won't mention, that have a high V, and when you trim, the landing line starts swinging in the wind. We also found that with the high V system, the safety system was less dependable when there were more wraps in the line. It was more reliable with the low V. So this was there was a safety concern as well.
How involved with the whole bar design were you when you came over?
A lot. Hugh and I are like brothers, and we spend hours per day on if we're together. We're working on projects side by side. I didn't do the technical stuff, but I'm offering a lot of feedback on the control system. And like I said, Hugh and I work together endlessly. Because we are the technical side of the kite and the control system. So we spend at least an hour a day on Skype discussing projects and problem solving and making it happen.
Well, the 3 new kites for the line and the bar have all turned out pretty amazing. I think all the dealers and the importers have all been really impressed.
Thank you.
From everybody, it's been top notch.
So. I'm glad you guys like it. I've been talking with a bunch of the guys who were with you, and they all seem quite happy.
That's pretty impressive. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing the interview.
Thanks for your time.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay, cool.